It is my pleasure to welcome David once again. He was with us last year, and I'm very happy to have you again with us this year.
Thank you very much. I came to Egypt 12 years ago on a one-year contract. Still here. I've been with the Royal British International School since it started 5 years ago. Exciting to be part of something new that's moving ahead. We recently had our winter inspection and got BSO accreditation and did very well at that. So that's been very exciting and nice to know that we're pretty much heading on the right track. I decided that even though the topic or the theme of this conference is developing a vision for education, I believe that we need to continue to do what we've been doing well, and in fact better than we have in the past. And we need to look at the relevance of what we've been doing and decide whether it's still relevant for the future. With the way the world is moving and the amount of information that we have, we've long ago left behind the days of our parents and grandparents when there was a finite amount, or there seemed to be a finite amount of knowledge to learn, and we just taught the students things and that was it. And we realized years ago already that we had to teach skills. And now we know, as we've been saying all along in this conference, we need to teach people to be able to change, to pivot. But we have to be careful not to leave behind skills and abilities that will still be useful going forward. And one of those is being able to study effectively for tests and examinations. I know that I thought a few years ago, why are we spending so much time learning facts? We should be learning skills more, and we are. But why do we have to learn for exams? Because now, excuse me, we have Google, and now we have AI, and we can find out whatever we want when we want. But, as the slide represents, it would be ludicrous for a surgeon doing open heart surgery. That's a very sanitized open heart surgery thing. It would be ludicrous for that surgeon to be standing there with a laptop or tablet learning how to do heart surgery as they went along. There's still very much a need for us to learn a body of knowledge about our different fields of expertise. But of course, we have to keep learning and keep being able to change direction and learn about new aspects of what we're doing. So, I'm going to ask Veronica, if Veronica's talking to me now, to tell me a little bit about a very famous professor of psychology at University of Virginia, professor of psychology, and who's particularly interested in learning theory.
Daniel Willingham is a professor of psychology at the University of Virginia. As a cognitive scientist, he is well known for his research into learning theory. He emphasizes that to master knowledge and skills, one must practice enough to be able to do things automatically.
That's Daniel Willingham, and he famously said, don't practice until you get it right, practice until you can't get it wrong. That doesn't go down all that well with many of our students. They want to be able to open the textbook, read the work, close it, and pass the exam. It doesn't work like that. And part of my talk today is about reminding ourselves of that fact and looking at strategies for being able to help students to do well in exams and tests. Now, I've got more videos, so let's see if it works. This is the Korean ladies archery champion, and in the video clips it shows part of a scene where she puts 3 arrows into the center of the bullseye, 3 arrows in a row from 70 meters. And that's the second. The third went in there as well. Can we go to the next slide and video that as well? Look at this. There are stages. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then 4. Every single time she fires an arrow, she does exactly the same thing, and the result is exactly the same. Okay, if you do exactly the same thing over and over again and you get the wrong result, then you need to change it until you're doing the thing over and you get the right result. And my argument is we need in education to be constantly looking at what is our target, and then working back from there, what must we do step by step to get ourselves into a situation where we're hitting the target every time. And this also applies to learning for examinations. See, the thing is, I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud with examinations. We all know, as leaders and teachers in schools, that we have to help students to cope with the modern world. We need the human warmth. We need to teach skills. But in the end, there is this goal that I have to do as a student well at the examination to open the door to the next thing that I'm going to do. And in Egypt, for all of the kids in independent education, it's university. All right. So we have to focus on that together with everything else. So why wouldn't we use strategies that get us there better than we did before, or better than maybe we're doing it now? And I just want to look for a few minutes at some strategies, because you could run a whole conference on this, and obviously I've only got about 20 minutes and I think I used more than half now. That kind of reminds me of me when I was a high school student. There were some areas where I was pretty good, and there were other things that I didn't understand. And so what did I do? I looked like him. I have no idea what's going on here. Did I ask anybody? No. Did I look it up? No. That only came later when I became more mature. And so we as teachers, we as leaders need to remind our teachers to make sure that their students do understand every last thing that they're teaching. By asking questions, by getting feedback immediately. I'll speak about that in a moment. Because you can learn something without understanding it, but it's pretty useless and it's much more difficult. And so we as educators need to make sure that our kids know what we're talking about and they know the vocabulary that we're using. So that is an important thing as far as learning is concerned. And then, even with all this technology, and it's useful to use technology for studying, even the latest research says that if you write things down, you remember them better than if you put them on a keyboard. And so encourage, even in the midst of tech, your students to write notes. And when they write notes, teach them a strategy for writing notes that involves a skeleton and flesh. You know what I'm talking about. Get them to continue to do that because it's important. Get them to do mind maps because you are doing that you're writing, you're drawing, and there is a connection between the physicality of doing that and your thoughts. Somebody once said to me, feedback is the breakfast of champions, and that is why it is so important for our teachers to continually give feedback, encouragement, but both correction and encouragement to enable students to move forward. It's part of the learning process. If we leave it out, then we leave a gap. Verbalizing. When I was a child, my parents, and we had those, and we still had telephone in the house, and our number was quite short because we lived in a smallish country, and I was taught to answer the phone by reciting the phone number, hello 37288, and I can still do it because I verbalized it, and the more you verbalize something, the more you remember it. If you verbalize information, you learn it. How many of you have been a teacher who's taught the same lesson to 3 different classes? And by the time you get to the 3rd one, you are flying, you don't look at any notes, you can improvise as you go along because you really know what's going on. That's because you verbalize it. And so encourage your students to verbalize, to talk. Encourage them to teach their teddy bears or whatever, or to talk to a camera and teach a make-believe audience. It helps. Right, let's see if another video will work.
Thank you for allowing me to share, David. Have you ever struggled to remember what you learned after just a few days? You are not alone. Today, we're going to explore a powerful technique called spaced repetition that can revolutionize your learning process. Spaced repetition involves reviewing information at increasing intervals. For example, you might review material after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, and so on. This technique helps reinforce your memory just before you're likely to forget the information. Apply this technique to any subject, from languages to medical studies. Spaced repetition is a game changer for long-term learning.
As I mentioned earlier, and we all know this, students like to open the book, read it, close the book, they think they studied for the exam, they haven't, they don't remember it. Spaced repetition. If your teachers put in place a spaced repetition strategy from the beginning of the year when they start their course, and they monitor their students so that they follow it. Look, you'll always get some who fall through the gaps, but if you monitor them, what you do is set up a spreadsheet calendar. Have at the end of the spreadsheet the exam date, and then have all the dates, and when you teach a topic, put the topic down, and then add in dates in which they will be revised or reviewed. And do that all the way through and keep monitoring it, and I promise you the exam results will get better. Guaranteed. As long as you follow it up, that will work. By the way, if anybody's interested in something like that, contact me. I put together a spreadsheet that does that. And you see, that's where you're using technology, but the technology is just a tool. It doesn't magically make your children do better. It's just if they use it properly that it does. One more thing. Can we just have one more video on active recall?
One key component of spaced repetition is active recall. Instead of just rereading notes, you actively try to recall the information. This engagement significantly enhances memory retention. Flashcards are a popular tool for this purpose. Modern spaced repetition systems, like Anki or SuperMeta, use algorithms to predict the optimal time for reviews. These systems adjust the intervals based on your performance, ensuring you review the material just before forgetting it.
Anki. Who knows Anki? Anybody know Anki? Anki, right? And then I don't know the other one, SuperMemo, but it's kind of similar. Flashcards. Now, if you want the very best flashcards, you write the question on one side and you put the answer on the other, and then when you when your students know the answer, they ask themselves, they put the card at the bottom. If you use Anki, which is free, it's virtual, it's electronic, and it has an algorithm that will help your students. If they answer the card correctly, it will use spaced repetition, but the spaces will be longer between when that particular question comes up. Really useful. Have a look at Anki. So it's modern technology moving towards an old goal, that is passing an exam. And I'm going to let Veronica have the last word. Thank you.
By the way, David, I thought I'd mention, we AI characters don't need any of the stuff we're covering in this talk. Just input the information once, and we remember it forever. Just saying.
Thank you, everybody.